There we go. Hey everyone, I'm back. I haven't streamed in a while, but I'm finally back, and I'm going to be working on the assembly for this costume because LA Comic Con is coming up in the next couple of weeks, and I need to have this done, or not in the next couple of weeks, at the end of the week, and so I have to have this done. I'm going to go ahead and go through basically the entire construction process with it for this current stream right now. I wanted to do more of an in-depth, actually stream all of the construction, but I realized that what was holding me up a lot was that I wasn't able to. I mean, this is a really difficult suit to assemble, and so it just wasn't working out doing the streaming and then also assembling the suit. Okay, so without further ado, I want to just go ahead and get into the entire pattern and the full assembly of everything. Hey everybody, shout out to all you commenting. I'm not really able to look at comments too much right now, and I want to just stick to the basic information of the stream. But basically, to start out, we're working on the Amazing Spider-Man 1 costume from back in 2012, the first reboot Spider-Man movie series. We'll look at a picture really fast. Here, and I want to go through each piece here, starting with the mask. You wouldn't necessarily start with assembling the mask. I think you'd want to do some practice first before you started with something like the mask. I actually recommend starting with the leg, and I'll get to the leg in a second, but first you have to make some decisions when assembling the pattern that I made, because you can do it like the movie. This is the bottom of the mask down here that goes along these pieces. You can just sew the bottom of the mask directly onto the suit. You've got the chest piece right here. So you can basically just sew the mask directly onto the chest piece like that right there once everything's closed up and together. But there's also a couple of other options with my pattern. You can do, like the movie, they have a specialized neck piece, collar piece. By the way, this is all detailed by El Fet Fernando. He did a great job, and him and his wife do a lot of puff painting, and they do a really excellent job. So they did a really good job puff painting everything, and that can kind of be a little nerve-wracking when you're putting the suit together. But anyway, this is the neck piece that goes along that chest piece in the same way that the mask goes together. But it's basically just a choice that you have to make. And then there's also a third choice, which is what I'll actually be doing for this suit, which is the hood. And for the hood, you'll actually sew the hood on the exact same way you would sew a normal mask on, But then you also sew together the mask, and then the mask can be put on top of the hood. It's a little hard to explain without showing you. I'll do another video, kind of like a part 2 of assembly guide, once everything is all sewn together in a day or two. But well, basically you just sew the hood on the exact same way you'd sew a mask, and the good thing about that is it keeps the neck up. So basically your face would be open right here where the front of the hood is, and it keeps the neck pulled up tight, because if you just only have the neck piece, you have a high chance of it sliding down and the mask sliding up, so you see, you know, a little bit of your neck or a little bit of white of the fabric. But if you do the hood and then put the mask on over that, it really does a good job of hiding that neck gap between the two, and you can also take the mask off pretty easily without a zipper or anything. I can see in the comments you guys are talking about the moving lens stuff. I definitely really want to get to that stuff too. It's just I need to do this first, and so it's basically just been a jumble in my head trying to figure out how to do this before doing the moving lens stuff. So just I still am definitely, you know, thinking about getting that moving lens stuff done. I just have to tackle this first. Back to this. You do the hood. Do the hood or the neck or the mask. Those are 3 options that you have when doing the suit, and you need to choose one. I've seen the only other suit I've seen sewn together, they unfortunately made a mistake where they took this optional neck piece. This is the one that if you wanted to have just the neck and collar, just like the movie, it comes to a point down here in the middle, and it kind of looks a little bit more like the movie suit, when the specialized suit that they made for having the mask taken off. I saw someone who sewed it together, and they accidentally included this neck in between the mask, so they basically sewed it together like this. They had the chest, and then this neck piece, and then the mask, and it didn't look too bad. It's just not the way you're supposed to do it. The mask is either supposed to be sewn directly to the chest and all the rest of the suit, or you do this collar piece. It's kind of an either or the hood. Those are the 3 options. So now that I've talked about that, you choose whichever option you're going to do. You have to talk to your seamstress or whoever is sewing it. If you're sewing it, you just have to figure out which way you're going to do it. And so for the construction of the mask, it's pretty simple. All you need to do is start by closing up these darts along the face. You start with the chin. I prefer to start with the chin here. You close those darts together. Get a little bit closer to the camera here. So you close these darts together. Basically, you bring these 2 shapes sewn together, and it creates the curve around the chin. Not perfect, but something like that. A little bit like that. So you bring all of those darts together. That kind of finishes off the piece before you move on. And the next step is to take the back piece of the mask. So you got the front here, and then these are the back pieces. The back piece sews onto this kind of extension on the top of the mask piece. So it kind of looks like a dreadlock that goes back off the mask piece like that. And then that allows you to close this dart. You know, you've got a dart on the side of the head that goes down here. If you look at this mask, this is the exact same mask actually completed. So you sew these 2 pieces together right here, and that's this seam right here. And then you close up this dart that goes along the edge, and that's this seam going all the way down here and all the way along. And you know, that's why you have these crazy shapes. It really allows the spandex to conform to the shape of a body. So you can see here the chin dart closed as well. And then finally, the last thing that you have is this forehead dart that goes all the way from the middle of the forehead, and once you've sewn on the back pieces to the front, and then also, it doesn't matter too much which order you do these last darts, but I like to do this dart last, so things aren't hanging around. You basically just sew it together flat like that. And also you can see here, well, I can see, you can't see it very well. I have the outline marked with Sharpie a little bit. You can do it however you want, because this printed edge here is exactly ½ an inch away from the outline of the suit on my pattern. So if you ever lose the shape of the mask, a lot of times there are corners and areas where darts come together where you might not know where it comes specifically together. But it's always ½ an inch away from the edge, so that should help you out a little bit if you get lost. So that's basically the mask. And once again, I don't recommend starting with the mask. I always start with the legs and the feet, because if you're new to sewing or if you're unfamiliar with sewing and stuff, you want to make your mistakes closer to the ground where people aren't going to see it as well. Come back to those later. So if you're starting on the legs, here's basically the portions. If you're doing the separated leg pattern that I actually sell on my Sellfy page, it comes in this 4-piece pattern that you have to actually assemble, like I've done right here. You have to assemble the leg stripe, and then you have to assemble the completed leg stripe leg combo to the boot. So that's what happens a lot in this suit. You have to figure out if you've got 2 seams that are running into another seam, that means that you have to do those first. It's like putting together a puzzle. You just have to figure out if these 2 seams are going down and then the boot goes across, that means you're sewing these first and then the boot last. So you start with these leg pieces. If you've bought the costume all of it printed together, you wouldn't have to worry about this. It comes printed just like this piece right here. So basically you have this piece already to go with just a slight dart along the back of the red stripe to get the shape right. One really important thing that I need to talk about since I'm discussing the leg is the back zipper setup. The belt actually, once the whole suit is finished, the belt actually is inserted back behind this leg stripe. I'll get this out of the way a little bit. So you see this belt is actually inserted back behind here, behind that leg stripe. So the reason why I'm bringing this up is that you can't finish this seam all the way to the top. And the reason why the construction is a little weird, you'd think you might want to put the belt together or something, is that this belt piece actually hides a component of the zipper on this suit. The zipper actually goes between the bottom, or the top of the leg and the bottom of the back here. So this is the back piece, the chest spider on it, or not chest spider, the back spider. And it actually goes together, it zips together right here to the top of the bottom of or to the top of the legs. And then this belt piece, since it is inserted in here, goes across and covers that zipper. You can imagine the other half, the other butt cheek of the leg piece here. So this belt piece goes across that zipper, and it creates a sort of little pocket down here that zipper goes, both pieces meet behind the belt. And that really hides the bottom zipper pretty well. And I think it's a little more functional. I'm not a big fan of the U-zip that goes all the way around and then meets the middle, or goes all the way from armpit to armpit. If you can do that well, that's fine. I always have trouble at the corners with zippers like that, because the zipper method is that the back is sort of like a hatch. It opens, it has zippers that go all the way around the edge. And so you either need to do a zipper that goes from the armpit down to the middle of the back, and then another one on the other side, or you can do a zipper that just goes all the way around. And these are usually invisible zippers, if you know anything about assembling zippers. And then the third thing you can do, which I like to do, is a separating zipper on the bottom, and then 2 invisible zippers that go down on each side. I find that to be the most functional, because then you can just zip the separating zipper first, and then zip the invisible zippers on the sides after that. And so I'll talk about the construction of that a little bit more once the suit's actually finished, and I actually have a finished version to show you. But I hope that kind of explains how these pieces go together. This is actually the side of the front piece, just to kind of show you where that zipper goes together here. So you'd have a zipper that goes all the way through here, and then down, and then around, or the other options I talked about. Let me show you really fast the suit, so you can kind of get a reference for what I'm. Now that I've kind of addressed that belt issue, because you have to, the main reason that's important is just that you don't sew this leg stripe all the way up. You just stop a couple inches short, because then once you're ready to install the belt, you sew it then with the belt in place. Okay, and so once you've gotten your leg piece sewn together like this, or if you're just doing a printed together piece, you start with a leg piece like this. Let me explain how the boot goes together on these suits. And this is pretty standard for most dye sublimation costumes. You have this dark spot right here that doesn't have any texture. That's actually the bottom of the boot. That's the sole of the boot. And the way this kind of weird shape comes together is that you fold it over at this little point right here, and when those come together, they create the kind of boot sole shape, and it's kind of a smaller, tiny shape because it's designed to stretch with the shoe. And another aspect of it, it's smaller than the bottom of the foot, and the seams are actually longer on the top edge. What that is that's something that happens in spandex, is that you'll stretch the bottom, the shorter length of spandex to reach the same length as the other side, and that creates sort of like a curved area. So what this does, when you stretch out the bottom piece and sew them together, it makes the shoe into sort of like a scrunched together curved shape, and that allows the seam to stay underneath the shoe. You don't even see the seam because it's stretched underneath the foot. So basically, when you're starting assembly of this leg piece, because this is kind of the first step if you have a together pattern, but first step for the full leg construction, you start with these this point right here where the sole and the top come together, and get a little closer here. And so you bring them together. You can see there's the top of the toe right here, and then the top of the toe on this other side. You bring those together, and you'll pin it together and also stretch while you're pinning. So this bottom piece is always going to be stretched, and then when it's done sewing, this top piece is going to be kind of bunched up. And like I said, that's so that when it finally is done, it'll be kind of a rounded shape. Your foot will kind of fill in, and the seam will be underneath a little bit. And that happens on the glove as well. The glove has a shorter seam on the inside of the hand. So like this seam right here will be shorter than this seam on the top, because your hand has a natural curved shape like this. So the glove is designed so that if you see it like this, it's kind of already curving. It's already matching the curve. And so with the leg, I'm about to move to the glove. With the leg, you just sew that, the tip of the toe, and then you work down to this point right here. You can see that there's a corner right here, and then there's kind of an indent on this side. And that's where the seam stops going around the bottom of your foot and then starts going up your ankle and up your leg. And so there's no seam or anything on the back of your foot or on the outside of your foot. That's kind of taken care of just by the stretchiness of the spandex. But you start this seam sort of separately. It's not even a very different seam, but once you finish it, it kind of allows it to start out that boot shape. Once it's together and you've gotten, you kind of can get an idea of how that is a boot, like a kind of unstretched, like a sock. It's kind of shriveled up like a sock, but that's so that the spandex has to stretch and it won't get really wrinkly. Okay, and so once you've assembled the boot, you have to go through and assemble the pieces first. Like I said, if you're getting a separated pattern, and that's what this kind of construction overview is for, if you've done the separated pattern, you're going to have a lot of pieces like this that are separated, and so you need to go through and put things together first, so it kind of turns from 30 tiny pieces into 5 kind of bigger pieces, like this boot, and I've sewn together all of the arm pieces here. And so moving to the arm, since the arm is basically the next step for assembling stuff like that, go ahead and move the boot out of here. Okay. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at the comments. Hope you guys are having good discussion about stuff. Okay, so moving on to the glove. I've got a sort of completed, I say sort of just because it doesn't have the final seam that goes up along the inside of the arm. Let's get focus here. Come on, camera. You can do it. Okay, there we go. That's the sort of completed glove. It actually is kind of complex. I went over it in the stream before the last stream. So the stream before the last one. You have to assemble each of these smaller pieces. So this blue piece had to have the red piece glued on top of it and then sewn. And then I actually, since the last stream, I went ahead and sewed it on with a zigzag. I went over what I did in the last stream and did a zigzag. Some of you were suggesting that, and I don't know why I was doing the straight stitch, because the last time I sewed one of these suits together, I did a zigzag, but I just didn't do it for this stream, or the last stream. But I went over it and I made it look a little bit more like the movie. So I went ahead and have this glove piece sewn together. You can see that I went over each of these edges with the zigzag stitch like I was just talking about, and that gave it a lot more of the movie style, and it makes a neater edge too. It was wrinkly, but once you put on the suit and the arm is stretched out, those wrinkles sort of go away. You want to strive for as few wrinkles as possible, and that's usually in the tension settings on your sewing machine. If you're getting a lot of wrinkles, then just mess around with your tension setting and figure out what's going on there and experiment until you find the perfect tension, and then hopefully you won't struggle with wrinkles too much. Anyway, this glove is just kind of glued together like in the last one, and then for assembling the upper arm pieces, something you have to keep in mind is that this is another one of those spots. It's not tight because it's not sewn together yet, but this is another one of those spots that you have to keep in mind, that you've got one seam right here between the glove and the back portion of the arm, and then you've got this other seam that goes down past and intersects that seam. So that means that you're going to be sewing together, and then you've got this red piece in the middle. I didn't mention that's kind of snuck in there in the middle. But you have to sew together. The order is the back arm to the red piece, and then back arm and red piece to the glove, and then glove arm pieces to the front arm. So you kind of, like I said earlier, it's like a puzzle. You have to figure out what the order of sewing everything together is. And so this glove is basically ready to be assembled to the top pieces of the suit now. So it's got this front seam that is connected to the chest and chest red and blue pieces, and then it's also got the back that's connected to the back pieces, and then the top is connected to the mask or the hood or the neck piece. So here I'll show you that process again here with the pieces all flat, just to kind of explain and clarify things. I think most people assembling a suit that are a little baffled by the construction. I think it's just a visual thing where you just need to see it put together like this to kind of get an idea of how it all goes together. I don't need the glove anymore. All right, so yeah, here I'll go over the construction again. I'm gonna do another video. It's probably a little too late to do it tonight because it's going to be a longer video, but I want to do a video that goes through the whole construction of the glove. One thing I forgot to mention, I have to put it back on really quick so that I can explain how this glove piece works. This is something that it took me a long time to figure out how to do this correctly. So I want to share this information. I want to do a longer video about it. But anyway, a basic glove pattern, you have your bottom piece of the glove, so the palm in this instance. You have the bottom piece of the glove, and then you have the top of the glove. So here, this is the top here. A lot of people, and I thought this at first too, thought that to sew a glove together, what you do, this is basically the quick way, is you just put the bottom on the bottom and the top on the top, and then you kind of just sew the way a hand shape is. You go over the finger and then down and then over the finger, and that works. It creates a semi-functional glove, but it's too tight around the fingers versus how much space there is. So the way professional gloves are constructed is you have a sort of gap piece that goes between the top and the bottom here. You can see that this piece, it's only about 3/8 of an inch or a centimeter wide, and it goes from the tip of the pointer finger, and it kind of it narrows to a point, because at the pointer finger you actually do have the top and the bottom just sewn together, and it's what I was talking about with, you have more surface area on the top than you do on the inside of the palm, so you actually have to stretch it while you're sewing it, but then that gives it a good curve of the hand stretch. This is kind of the natural position it takes because it's got less fabric on the inside of the palm, and so that little gap piece goes in between, goes around each finger, in between, around, and then it finally goes to the pinky, and it does the same thing at the tip of the pinky that it does at the tip of the pointer finger. And this is the gap piece right here that I'm talking about, that goes in between each finger. And so it's a daunting task. It took me a little while to figure out how to actually do it so that this gap goes in between each finger, and that really allows you, if you've ever used the other type of glove, you'll know that basically this is impossible. What I just did, I just easily took each of those fingers off because there's actually enough surface area that they're not stretching really tight around your fingers. And so I'll have a separate video on that, because I've never seen a video on YouTube that goes into the process of sewing a glove in that advanced way. If it's too frightening, you can just sew it like I said to start. You can just sew the top to the bottom, and I mean it's not as high a quality of glove, and it's more likely to break and stuff and cut off circulation to your fingers. But it's a lot easier. Sewing a glove is basically one of the most difficult things out there because there's so much little tiny detail that goes into it. So here, let me explain really quick the assembly of the top of the arm again. So you've got this central red piece, then you've got the back piece that covers the bicep and not bicep. Gosh, why can't whatever the oh man, why can't I remember the tricep? No, whatever. It covers the back of the arm and the elbow, and you sew those two pieces together. Like that, and then once you've got those two pieces sewn together, that's when you put them together with the glove, because the tip of this arm red piece meets this sort of red little skinny area on the glove to give it a look like it's going all the way down the arm and onto the glove. The suit has really cool curves and stuff. It just makes it more difficult to assemble. Okay, so once you have these three pieces sewn together, so like I said, it's like a puzzle, that's when you can put this inner bicep, yeah, that's actually for the bicep, you put that piece in, and then you sew up along that curve, and then you've got this, essentially, all of those pieces together. So moving on with assembling pieces, you've basically got the glove done. One key thing to remember: you're not sewing up to completion on these arm pieces here. You're not going all the way up to the inner arm, because the way t-shirts and most shirts work is that the inner arm inseam lines up with the side of the torso seam. So you're just basically sewing those together as one long seam, and then it eventually becomes the zipper for getting into the suit. But you don't sew that together until you've got everything sewn together to the front and the back, and you don't tackle the inner arm seam until you've made a sort of poncho of the arms and the front and the back pieces. They can basically go on like that with a neck opening. So to kind of explain how it goes together with the chest, since you got I'll do the one that's already together. You've got your arm piece assembled. You'll basically have your chest piece assembled in the same way with a blue corner piece here. So when that's assembled, and that's another one of the assembling the piece before kind of the broader assembly. You basically put these blue pieces on either side of the chest piece like this, and you can see here that these curves, they don't match. You can see this one curves in, this one curves out. That happens a lot with shirts and pants and stuff, and that just means that the fabric is able to really curve under your armpit right there, because that's the armpit spot. But basically, when it comes to time for construction, you'll just sew this arm and this chest piece together like this, then again on the other side, and then you'll sew the back piece to it on the back, on this side, and then on either side, and that makes basically the poncho, the sort of poncho I was talking about, with the neck opening, and then it's open on these sides all the way up, and that's when you'll actually sew in and then up to about this point where the zipper starts. Basically, like I was saying, you've got the chest here, and the chest has corners that you're going to have to sew. I'll have to do some kind of tutorial that teaches how you do corners. I'm thinking I'm going to do that with the unsewn leg piece I have. I'll do a kind of quick sewing overview for this pattern, how to put it together for that. But you've got those two corners, so it's just a little bit of stuff you have to worry about. You sew it all the way down to the bottom, and it kind of creates this bottom that is going to be sewn to the pants eventually. Ultimately, the suit is going to be in like a shirt part and a pants part, and you'll just sew them together at the front, and then have the zipper connecting in the back for the back hatch. Okay, so you assemble the chest pieces, and then you also need to do a little bit of assembly for the back as well. So the back is here. just blue up at top. And this is another one of those areas where if you had just the simple print with all the colors together, this would already be put together. This is basically what the back piece looks like put together. These red portions come to a point right up here in the center, if you can see that. And that, if I go to the reference picture I've got really fast, so you can see, I'll show really again, you've got the point here, and that's right here, it lines up with the top of the arm, and then in here the mask actually goes into that point in there. And so I'll show you. And so that's this piece if you sew these on. And what I was talking about with the back of the mask is you take your back of the mask pieces and it comes to a point here, and you get that point down in there, and so you would, for instance, have all of that sewn together. You would essentially just leave this seam unsewn until the end. And then once you have all of these pieces together and everything sewn together, that's when you come in and you sew the blue piece up into those corners and up to that point on the mask there. You can do it either way, really. It's just however it makes sense. The key here, I mean, I know that a lot of these pieces, if you're tasked with sewing this thing together, it can be kind of overwhelming and confusing, but just look at a lot of reference pictures like I've been showing of the actual movie suit, because I went through a lot of trouble to try and get the actual pattern matching the movie suit, so that you can just look at pictures of the movie suit to figure out how the construction works. Okay, moving on. So basically, like I'm going to keep talking about once you've gotten everything assembled. So if this is the back and this is the arm piece right here, you have all these pieces assembled, and you've got the arm piece assembled here, and you still have this under part left open because that is sewn last, and then the zipper. The zipper starts about an inch down on this torso seam. You really want to, I don't like to start the zipper right at the point in the armpit because it makes it really difficult to start the zipper, and it's not quite as strong, and so I start about an inch or an inch and a half down from the armpit, but that's where you stop when you're sewing that armpit inseam, and then you start the zipper that goes around the sides and the bottom. Okay, so if you've sewn together this arm piece to the top, and you've done the sort of poncho, basically that's when you take the completed mask piece. This one's actually, basically what you'll have when it's completed. You'll have the point in the back here, and you actually start, well, I had said in the center. Really, once again, whatever works for you, you do whatever works. But you start sewing that all together, and you go around the neck, and you'll be stretching out the neck. There's more surface area around the collar than there is in the mask, but once again, that stretches it out and makes it taper correctly up into the mask. And so at that point, you've got everything assembled. You've essentially got this mask already assembled. You've got both of your arm pieces and your chest and everything assembled, and you have a shirt, essentially. It's not, you don't have your zipper yet. You haven't started your zipper, but you can sew your underarm inseam up until right about this point. Like I said, here's the chest piece that you'll sew it up against, and so you sew it to like right about there, and that's where the zipper starts. The zipper starts at about that point there, and you'll have an invisible zipper. You can go ahead and install the invisible zipper now too, because the invisible, well, in the method I'm talking about, where you have two invisible zippers on either side, so you have one invisible zipper here, one invisible zipper here, and then a separating zipper down below here that is hidden by the belt. You can go ahead and sew the invisible zippers down to about this point, about the point where they would meet up with the separating zipper. You sew those invisible zippers, and they'll just kind of go off into nowhere. And so at that point, you got a shirt. You have your completed front, back, arms, mask sort of shirt, and it's got zippers going down the sides here between these chest pieces, as it's, they've already been kind of sewn together down there. So what the next step will be assembling the pants and the shirt pieces. Now really quick, I have to talk about the pants a little bit more, because I didn't finish talking about the construction on pants. Now for the pants, like I said, you've got your leg pieces here. This bigger curve is the butt. Butts curve like that, and then the fabric comes and kind of goes into the under, crotch area, and then this smaller curve is where the front, the junk. And so what you need to do is once you have this leg piece sewn together, and the last place I left off was that you're sewing from, this point and this little concave part. You want to match up where the boot ends. So you want to match the boot on this side as well as this side, so that when you look at them from the outside, they line up. You actually want, you don't want, it's kind of the same as lining up the webs. It's easy to kind of have the boot seam, be on either side, but you just want to make sure that you actually get that really well lined up. And for this, you actually do want to sew all the way up to the inseam here, all the way up to the point. So you're left with a full half pants piece here that can go on your leg, and you can actually wear it at that point. And it actually goes all the way up to the top here. And that's not the way you traditionally sew together pants, but there's a reason for that. And that's because these costumes are kind of unique in that they have a sort of tiny little gusset piece. It's going to be impossible to find. Somewhere. Oh, I had it. Oh, here it is. A tiny little gusset piece. This is basically everything that's covering the family jewels here. It's basically, like if you think about underwear kind of has a central compartment that sculpts things. The modern Spider-Man costume has a seam that just goes straight down the middle. They basically kind of went more with like a pants style for that suit, and that makes sense. It's a little more functional and kind of makes a little more sense. But I like the way this one looks. It looks a little more like sporty and like activewear. But once you have the suit sewn together all the way up to the top of the inseam here, what you're going to do is you're actually going to sew this gusset, starting lining it up with the top here, because once again I said it's going to be like pants. So you're lining it up with the top here perfectly, and then you curve along here, and you're actually going to go beyond this seam here. This leg inseam comes up and doesn't meet to the point. Everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people that I see sew this thing, they sew to the point, and it's not a huge deal or a huge detail, but it does limit the stretchability of the piece or the mobility. Because if you have all of your seams kind of coming to a point, then it's putting a lot of pressure on every seam that is coming to that point. Whereas if you go past that inseam that comes up the inside of the leg, and then have it meet the seam, but then it keeps going, it stretches more. So like, imagine that this seam comes up, and then there's another seam similar coming down, and it's your crotch, so it stretches a lot, like when you crouch and stuff. And what this does is it allows it to stretch. It's got a section of spandex in between that allows it to stretch. Whereas if you met the point at the seam and it just kept along, then that seam going all the way along and all the way down to the other side of the boot is limiting your flexibility. And that's why they designed it that way. And a lot of people don't get that quite right. I've put instructions on the actual print itself to make that a little more apparent, but it's just something that it helps with the flexibility and stuff. So you sew this edge past the inseam, the leg inseam, and it kind of comes to a point, and you stop at the tip of that point, and then you take the other leg and you would sew it exactly the same on this other side to the inner inside leg seam here. And then once you've gotten both legs sewn to this crotch piece, you go to the area where they both stop, where it comes to a point, and you sew just the butt pieces together. Just the front, or both pieces together. It's pretty easy because you're essentially just taking this large seam here and putting them opposite of each other like this, And when you sew those together like that, it gives you that butt curve that you need in order to actually have it fit down and around your butt and your leg. There you go. Yeah, so it comes together like that. And at that point, once you've gotten that butt seam sewn, your pants are basically fully together, minus this little gap that we've left for the belt piece back here that we've left. We still don't want to insert the belt. First, we're going to put the pants and the shirt section together. It's a little difficult without having the pieces actually done to show you how it all goes together. Like I said, I want to do a part 2 once I'm just finished with it all, and then I'll just be able to show it to you. I'll just be able to show you the finished product, and that'll maybe solve a few more issues you're having if you're trying to sew one of these together yourself. So basically, you'll have your pants portion finished, and you'll have your shirt portion finished, and that's when, I'm going to lay this out really quick, you'll sew the front portion together. You start with this front portion. So you've got that crotch gusset, this is the leg, remember. You'll start, and again I start in the center just to make sure that the center is fully lined up. I go off in one direction, and then I probably start on the other side and meet up, because that's the way sewing just kind of works. You've got these side pieces, and you can see that it does this little bump up, but basically you just go along and you sew up until this point. And like I've said, you've got your invisible zipper already. It's important to have the invisible zipper sewn in, because then you sew up to the invisible zipper, and that's where the belt pocket starts. Once you've sewn up to this invisible zipper, then you're actually sewing this part back, and that is when you start installing this back separating zipper. You can actually install the zipper that goes between both leg pieces, back leg pieces. This is probably all very confusing just because it's not sewn together correctly. But this is where you install your separating zipper. You install one half going along the bottom of the back piece, and then you install the other half going along the bottom of the leg pieces, stopping right at this corner that's hidden a little bit behind the leg stripe. And once you've got both of those zipped together, or the separating zipper halves on, the suit is basically wearable at that point. All it needs is the belt to actually hide that last separating zipper. And so that's when you finally get the belt and insert it. You'll sew the edges of the belt over, so it gives it a little, nicer of an edge. Get a little closer. But so the belt is flat like this. You actually fold the edge over and then sew it like that, so it gives it a nice rounded edge as opposed to just flat out, and then you're less likely to see the pink color or the white color underneath. So you'll fold those edges and you'll sew those with a zigzag stitch so that it has a lot of stretch. And then once those edges are sewn, that's when you insert it into this leg stripe. Finally, that left open little seam comes into play, and you insert it into that leg stripe on that side, and you also insert it on the other side, because you'll have the same leg stripe over here, and you sew it on either side. And so once again, you already have all of your zippers in place, and you're just sewing the belt in place. And then finally, the last thing that you sew is a line you go along the bottom seam that you made when you were folding it over, and you sew it to the bottom piece so that the belt doesn't ride up or shrink down. Basically, because once it stretches, it kind of wants to do this stretched up thing where it just gets really tight and doesn't stay unfurled. And so that's why you sew it to the actual underneath the separating zipper. You'll be sewing underneath the separating zipper, but you sew it to that. It's kind of nice having everything lined up like this. And then you'll sew that, and then that gives you this pocket that I'm talking about, where basically that's how you get into the suit. You'll have a hatch like that, essentially. That is how you get in, and then it zips up the sides and then along the bottom of the back. And the belt creates a little pocket that hides that zipper. And so that's basically the sewing portion of the suit. If you have to do other zippers, another note is you can do other zippers. Like, for instance, on this arm, I could do glove zippers. I could do a zipper that starts where I haven't sewn here and actually goes all the way up past, you need about 8 inches to actually get your hand out. But having a zipper on the glove, you can even put zippers on the inside of the leg so that your feet can come out and you can wear normal shoes. And then another nice quality of life zipper is actually having a zipper on the crotch, and that's something they did for the movie. And then also they did it for ASM 2 as well. They put a zipper on either side of the crotch. You put one on both sides, and then the crotch is its own hatch that you unzip, and then it unzips like this. And that gives you a way of going to the bathroom. So basically you would need glove zippers because you don't want to get your gloves dirty, but glove zippers and then 2 zippers on either side of this crotch dart, and then that allows you to open that like a little hatch and go to the bathroom. And that is a huge quality of life improvement. But the biggest problem there is that when you do those zippers, they can be kind of apparent, and then also the little metal tabs for the zippers can kind of hang down from your crotch. You can see set pictures for Amazing Spider-Man 2 where they have those little zippers hanging down. Cool. Let me think. Any other notes? I wanted to address this early on. I've talked about this in other streams. Some people are hesitant to sew on puff paint because they're afraid of all the work that people have put into it. But if you're just slow and careful with it, it's not too frightening. And then also, automotive interior wipes are pretty important for sewing together a lot of puff paint like this. Because what can happen is when you put 2 pieces together facing inward, because that's how you have to sew. You have to sew with the pieces facing inward together, and then once it's finished, it opens the seam up like that. But it can be hard if you don't put this automotive kind of protective oil on the puff paint, because that allows it to kind of slide around. You can see that it's the 2 pieces of puff painted fabric are sliding around pretty easily on top of each other, and usually that does not happen. It's usually sticky, and wherever it touches, it doesn't want to move very much, and there's a lot of friction. Once you've gotten everything assembled, that's when you would glue your shoes on, your Asics, if you could ever find a pair, or make a pair, however you would want to do it. And then you need a face shell, but I mean that's kind of more just the overall putting the suit together stuff. This is mainly the sewing aspect of the suit. Okay, so I hope that basically covered everything, because this is definitely one of the most complex Spider-Man suit patterns I've ever designed, or just patterns in general, because it has so many curves and crazy shapes coming together, and it's just not a standard, shirt and pants type spandex pattern that you usually have, which is a lot easier to sew together. But it's cool. This will be done in a few days, and we'll get to see how it looks all together. I actually haven't seen this pattern finished yet, so I'm really excited to see how it all looks. Because once again, shout out to Fernando Elfet on Instagram and Facebook. He did a really great job detailing everything. I did the spider detailing with the silicone, but all the puff paint and webs stuff looks really good. and has a really cool look to it. Makes the final costume looks really cool when you get the whole thing on. So we'll have pictures of this in a few days because it's going to be done in a couple days. I'll be on again probably tomorrow to sew together the opposite glove to this one because it's a kind of complicated process. But once again, I've never seen a tutorial for how to sew together a more complicated glove pattern on YouTube. Camera's having a lot of trouble focusing right now. I'm not sure why. Okay, so that's probably it for the tutorial aspect. It's great getting on here again. I haven't streamed in a long time, as you guys are aware. I've wanted to stream for months, ever since my last stream. I've been setting up doing this stream specifically for weeks and weeks, but it's kind of just a continual process where it's like, well, this isn't a good time. Everybody's in school, or it's too late, or something like that would always come up. And even in the last week, since I wanted to do the last stream, I actually had roofers start coming over during the day when I wanted to get things done, and so I have this constant stomping sound over my house. So I've had to deal with that too. But glad to finally get this information out there. So yeah, I'll be back again with a glove sewing tutorial, and also probably that's when I'll do a few of the techniques as well for like how to sew seams underneath webs and stuff. So yeah, tune in for that, and thanks for tuning in again after all this time. See you guys later.